Yeah, the reason I thought it'd be good to talk about this on the Less Insurance Dependence podcast is that the incident of these umbrella plans is accelerating rapidly. And yet it was something we encountered in my own practice in LifeSmiles, back in 2007. But the difference between 2007 and today is that many PPO plans are contracting their administration with these networks, with other plans. So they're outsourcing it. They're contracting their administration of their plan to other plans. And as a result of that, you are now included in these other plans that in many cases, dentists aren't even aware that they somehow got roped into these other plans. This came up recently with one of my clients, and she said, Gary, I was so disappointed because I thought I resigned from United Concordia. I thought I was done. And I thought I was, we did all the steps. We started talking to our patients. We sent the letter to United Concordia patients. And then I find out that as a result of being in United Concordia, I was in 8 other plans as well. And because I resigned from United Concordia, it doesn't necessarily mean that resignation applies to the other 8 plans. And she felt a little bit deflated, Naren, because she felt like she was one step closer to reducing her insurance dependence. But it was kind of like taking one step forward and then 8 steps back because she discovered there's 8 other plans. And I wanted to have this conversation with all of you so you don't experience that same kind of emotional, upset that she experienced. So, man, I don't know if I'm ever going to get there. I thought I was done with that plan, and it turns out I'm not. And it's just more common than ever. If you're a regular listener to Less Insurance Dependence podcast, you know that we teach a 6-step plan to successfully resign from PPO plans. And step number 1 is to know your data. Know how many plans you're contracted with. And actually, there's 3 pieces of information we want to know under that step 1, know your data. Number 1 would be, and think of this in a spreadsheet format, a simple Excel spreadsheet with 3 columns. Column number 1 will have, and I'd alphabetize it from column number 1, the name of every PPO plan you're contracted with. Now, there's a couple of different, there's actually about 3 different ways you can get that information. One way is if you happen to be a very organized office and you have copies of those PPO plans, you can actually pull up the printed copy of the PPO plan and wade through it and find out if there's umbrellas that are included underneath it. It will be in the document. It'll be there. And you can wade through it and do that. I generally don't recommend that because it can be very time consuming and very tedious, but that's one way to do it. A second way is to have your office manager, insurance coordinator, call the insurance company, speak to a supervisor. You're going to have to push this uphill a little bit. Likely the customer service rep on the phone won't be able to answer the question. So you say, may I please speak to a plan administrator or a plan supervisor? Because I have some questions that I think need to be answered by a PPO plan supervisor. Get the supervisor on the phone and ask 2 things that you're going to ask while you have that person on the phone. Number 1, are we contracted as a result of being contracted with you? Let's say it's Aetna. Are there umbrella plans that we're included in? Because we're contracted with you, are there any umbrella plans or other PPO plans that we would be contracted with as a result of being in your plan? And they are required to tell you that. They're required to tell you that. And then the second question you want to ask while you have that person on the phone, how much notice are we required to give in order to resign? How much notice? And it'll typically be 30, 60, or 90 days. How much notice? So again, go back to that spreadsheet. Column number 1 would be alphabetized, every single plan you're contracted with. Column number 2 would be the number of active patients in that plan. And active, I would define as having had an appointment in your practice in the last 18 months. There's different definitions of active, Naren. Some consultants would use 24 months, 2 years. I think that's a little loose. I know of some consultants that swing the pendulum the other way and they make it 12 months. And I think that's a little bit tight. So I think a middle ground of 18 months is a nice compromise there. So ask, how much advance notice are we required to resign? It will almost always be 30, 60, or 90 days, more typically in the 60 or 90-day range. However, sometimes there's a very rare exception outside of 30 or 60, 90, or 90 days. So you're going to want to know that. And then column number 3 will be that listing how much advance notice you're required to give. So in column number 3, column number 2, the number of active patients in that plan, column 3, the advance notice you're required to give. I mentioned there's at least 3 ways to get the information on how many plans you're contracted. One is to wade through the contracts and try to figure it out. Generally don't recommend that. Number 2 is to call the insurance company, call the PPO plan, speak to a PPO plan supervisor and ask the question. There's a third way though, and that is that the plans are required to send you a 1099. If they're sending you a check, they're required to send you a 1099 form. So you could take a look at wherever those 1099s are stored in your office, perhaps with your accountant, maybe your bookkeeper, and just match up. If you're getting a 1099 from the PPO plan, that means they're paying you, and it means you're contracted with them. So a third way to go ahead, and get that information. One way or another, or some blending of the 3 of them, will allow you to complete that information. And what that's going to allow you to do is kind of keep your emotions on keel when you realize that, I thought I was in 12 plans, I'm actually in 30, and I'm making up numbers there, but these numbers are not unusual in what we're seeing today. And then you simply have to walk through the process so you complete it A to Z, and that you don't leave any, you don't stay contracted with a stray plan that you weren't even aware of. So really it's an administrative kind of checklist you have to go through, but it's very important because if you're still contracted with them, you're still going to be affected by the low fees. You want to make sure we get free of those. You get outside of those. And it is a detail. It's manageable. You can do this. And certainly we can help if we help our coaching clients with this, and we can help you with it. We're trying to help here in the podcast as much as we possibly can. But the main detail that I want to communicate here is that if you think you're only in 3 plans, the reality is there might be many more as a result of these umbrella plans that are sort of taking over the PPO plan administration landscape for sure. But it's frustrating to think that you're at the finish line and you're only on the first lap. You're not quite done, and that can kind of have an emotional weight on you for sure. And not only that, but it can have a financial consequence, of course, because you'll notice that if you're still in network with that plan, with a plan you weren't even aware of, the checks you'll be getting, the reimbursement you'll be getting will be at that very low contracted fee. And that's what we're trying to get away from.